Hello, kings and queens and those between. It is I, LizIsATrex, and I'm here to tell you a tale. A story about how I got into reading Cosmere. Now, if you don't know what Cosmere is, it is this big fantasy fiction universe written by a man named Brandon Sanderson. There's different stories that are tied to this universe, but the two that I am reading currently, I am reading the Stormlight Archives. I'm on Oathbringer right now. And then currently I am actively reading Mistborn. I'm on the first Mistborn book. But if you haven't gotten into any of Brandon Sanderson's stuff, I highly recommend you do because he's a good storyteller. But we're not talking about it specifically today. We're talking about how I became a part of this. And if you are new to this channel, please hit that subscribe and that like button. And if you have been here before, hello, welcome back. Let us begin our story. Now, I do have to start with a little bit of backstory about me. So, I had a very rough introduction into reading as a kid. And because of this, my reading speed tends to be a little bit slower for a number of reasons. I won't get into them specifically, but one of the reasons is because I have a condition called dyslexia. Now, if you're not aware of what dyslexia is, it is this condition where someone's brain has a hard time processing letters and numbers and words. And so what it might look like, it just depends on the individual because it can be different. The way that they describe it can vary from person to person. But for me, what I see on that page is that letters and numbers tend to buzz around like little bees. So they physically move. And on top of this, I have an issue where letters that look similar to one another, they tend to get swapped out for what they shouldn't be. So, for example, hold on, I'm losing my train of thought. So, for example, lowercase p's and lowercase q's, they get swapped pretty often. Like, it's not that I can't distinguish the letters, is that my brain physically switches out a Q where a P should be, or sometimes it's an H instead of a lowercase n. It's what my brain physically does whenever it sees those kinds of letters. So you can imagine that this causes me to have to read a sentence or a paragraph like 3 or 4 times. So take some of the books that are in this series and times it by 3, sometimes 4. It just depends, because that's how many times I have to read it. in a sitting, if I'm wanting to actually get through the book and make sense of what I'm looking at. Now, someone with dyslexia, it doesn't mean that they can't have a fast reading speed. They absolutely can, with a lot of practice. I, as a child, did not get that practice for like I said, for other reasons outside of the dyslexia, but we will not get into those because we're talking about Cosmere specifically. So, you might be wondering, Liz, if you liked writing so much, how could you get away with not reading often? And my answer to that is I read a lot of manga, technically. So that I did read a little bit, but not like big novels or anything like that. I also read fan fiction. I was a kid, please don't judge me. So back then, a lot of the stuff I wrote, it was heavily influenced by things like anime, manga, video games, the classic nerdy things. That's all the stuff that influenced my writing. And this interest, it caused me to start attending anime conventions closer towards high school. And then that habit kind of continued and peaked as I started going to college. And by the point that college rolled around, I was attending conventions like 2 to 3 times a year, and I still attend them a pretty consistent amount, at least twice a year. And at these conventions, I met 2 friends. Actually, I have more friends than this, but I'm only mentioning these 2 because they're involved in the whole Cosmere thing. But I met 2 friends who I will call one of them Wit because he has Wit-like tendencies, and the other one Dalinar because it just kind of fits. Now, these 2 people, I would say we are really close friends. We've known each other for quite a few years at this point, almost a decade. And I'm also very aware that they were the bookworms of our group. And Because of this, and because of how well we know each other, I was comfortable with asking them for reading recommendations when my interest in reading thicker books, actual novels, peaked. And these two, they have very similar interests that I do, so I figured that their suggestions, it would probably be something I would end up enjoying. And on top of that, they also knew some of my past and stuff, so it made me more comfortable to ask them specifically for recommendations. Now, for context into the kind of people that they are, Wit and Dalinar, I would say they tend to be partners in crime with a lot of things. They're mischievous. Not in a mean way, but sometimes if they see opportunities in front of them, they will take them. And the context you are given it's not very much. And in this case, when I asked for reading recommendations, the only context I got was, no worries, Liz, we've got this. We'll take care of this for you. Don't worry about a thing. My friends, that's the kind of line you do when you don't want to hear from them, because it means that whatever they are planning, it's gonna be a journey. And my goodness, the journey that I was taken on is definitely worth it. So a few months go by with no hints and clues as to what they're plotting. And we have a gathering that we attended, that we did, where we're just hanging out as friends, and I am gifted a book. And this book is the first book in the Wheel of Time. Now, for avid readers, you might get a little upset, especially if you've read Cosmere and you're into those series as well, because you may have noticed that this series, this video, it's not labeled my introduction into the Wheel of Time. It's labeled my introduction into Cosmere, and that is because that book, while also having dyslexia, I also have ADHD, so that means object permanence it's not a thing for me. Oftentimes I will forget an object that I own. I will forget where it is. Sometimes I even forget where people are, or forget about them entirely. And it's not because I can't remember or that I don't care. It's because my brain struggles with remembering with certain things. So that book sat on my shelf for months. I forgot it existed. And I don't worry, I do plan on going back to reading that book, but right now I'm kind of obsessed with Cosmere, and you can blame Wit and Dalinar for this specifically. Now, fast forward to another few months going by, we're having our annual end of the year bonfire where we're just catching up and enjoying it. Wit's in town, we're all having a good time, but there's something different about this bonfire compared to the last one where I got the Wheel of Time book. Because there's some deviousness in the air. Specifically because Dalinar is paying very close attention to whatever Wit is doing, which tells me that some mischievousness is about to take place. It's about to unfold. And I am eventually informed that Wit has a gift for me. And so, naturally, I become intrigued at whatever he has plotted. Because for most of that night, we were aware that that he was up to something. It was pretty obvious that he was up to something. And so he pulls out this very thick book from his bag. I thought this thing was a dictionary at first. And the book he gave me was The Way of Kings. It's the very first book in the Stormlight Archives. And to give any of you context who don't know or haven't seen how big the Stormlight Archive books are, the very first one is over 1,000 pages long. You can imagine how alarming the size of that book might be to someone who doesn't read as often as she probably should. Because that book was massive to me. It probably could have been 3 dictionaries long. And I went into this believing that it was going to go in the same way that it did with the Wheel of Time, where it would sit on my shelf and I would forget that it existed for months at a time. My friends, that is not what happened. because Wit and Dalinar, they are both very aware of my ADHD. They have witnessed it take place. They have been around me long enough to see how bad it is and how often I forget things. And they both collectively decided, I'm not sure when they decided this, that they weren't going to let me forget about this book this time around. Because for the next year, every single week, I would get texts, sometimes more than once a week, asking about my progress in this book. They would not let me forget about it. Never a moment. And my progress would range from, okay, she got through 1 chapter this month. That's progress. Keep going, Liz. Don't stop. To, okay, well, yay, she got through 4 chapters this month. Keep going. Don't give up. You gotta keep going. That's pretty much the series of text messages I got. Sometimes they would ask me about my favorite parts, and sometimes I would have to shamefully admit that my progress didn't move much compared to the last time they've had that conversation with me. But eventually we get to the middle of the year, and I am about 1/4 of the way through this giant monstrosity of a book. And I had gotten about 3 different messages asking me about my progress in that week. And I decided that out of spite, I was going to try and finish this book by the end of the year. Which, like I said, to an avid reader, that's probably not that big of a challenge. But for me, I still had 3/4 of the way to go, and it had taken me half a year to get through the 1/4 mark. So you can imagine how things have changed with me suddenly having to try and get through the rest of it before the year ended. So off I go on this journey to obsessively read. I got to the point where I was setting alarms for myself to remember to take time to read to get through this novel. And funny enough, my roommate Navani, she's known me since high school. She's a sister to me at this point. And she knows my typical reading interest. She knows that usually I read manga, so she's not used to watching me read thick books, especially books the size of 3 dictionaries. And she became intrigued by watching me obsess over trying to get through these giant novels. And I got to the end of the year, and I assumed that if I finished this book, it would put an end to the obsessive text messages that I was getting. But honestly, I'm not bothered by it. I honestly really appreciate these 2 as friends, because they knew what it would take to nudge me through. They already knew. They had a plan. But what ended up happening, instead of me putting an end to the text messages, is that I became completely addicted to the Stormlight Archives. And I am 100% convinced that Wit and Dalinar both knew it was going to happen, because when they came down for our annual bonfire that next year, they already had a reading list ready for me for the rest of the Cosmere stuff. So now I'm on this adventure to try and get through all of them. That next year, I ended up reading 4 Brandon Sanderson novels, which is pretty impressive compared to how the first year went. And then it caused Navani to start reading The Way of Kings because she became intrigued, watching me slowly pick at this series. But yeah, that's how I got into Cosmere. I still get occasional text messages from Wit and Dalinar asking me about my progress. I'm kind of lagging behind with Mistborn, but that's because I'm reading the digital copy, and I'm also listening to the audiobook, so it's like I'm reading it twice or like 5 times. But yeah, that's how we became a Cosmere fan. If you enjoyed this video, please hit a like and a subscribe if you haven't done so already. And down in the comments section, tell me who your favorite Cosmere character is. Now, please remember, I am only on the first Mistborn book. I've read Warbreaker. I've read Tantris. There's the dyslexia talking again. And then I've read the first 3, I think 4 books in Stormlight. The only one in Stormlight I haven't read is Wind and Truth, and that's because I'm trying to get through Mistborn first. Anyways, that's all I have for you today. Please remember to take some time for yourself and also drink some water. As for now, goodbye, and I'll see you in the next video.